I fear that if I wander too much, I'm going to take a victory lap. And I want to take a victory lap because I was 100% right. I said that this was going to be the undoing of McCarthy. I've said this multiple times. I said this on Good Morning Kiev. I was making references to how his negotiations with the radicals and making this agreement that any single legislator in the Republican Party could at any time call a recall vote gives too much leverage to those radicals, because that means they can use that to leverage any number of concessions out of him, concessions that he might not be able to match with other legislators, more establishment legislators in the party, the vast majority of the Republican Party. For example, on Ukraine aid, which there is a big divide in the Republican Party over Ukraine aid. While you go over to the Democratic Party, they're all saying Slava Ukraini, Herom Slava, Bakto Nash, Nestor Ivanovich Makhno. You know, they're in the trenches for it. While within the Republican Party, there's more of a divide. And if you make it so that at any point, any one legislator can make a recall vote, potentially that means that any piece of legislation you push through to compromise with the establishment members of your party, or those who support Ukraine, or those who maybe want to compromise with the Democrats on infrastructure, on inflation, on housing policy, on unemployment, on food stamps, on anything, that could be something that undid McCarthy. And now, recently, as the government was about 1 hour from shutdown, McCarthy came to an agreement to extend the negotiations, for the budget, for the defense budget and the budget more generally. He was really playing it on the wire. And in that last moment, he stripped out Ukraine aid from the extension, $300 million of Ukraine aid, and is going to make it so they vote on it separately. This is the tail wagging the dog. This is these radicals leading McCarthy by the nose. You do not let the tail wag the dog wags the tail. But he didn't learn that lesson. And so when he stripped the aid but still negotiated an extension because he had to make some compromise with the Democrats, because he had to make some compromise with more establishment members in his party or more moderate members in his party, that was too much. And so Matt Gaetz called a recall vote, and they were able to scrounge up about 8 votes against McCarthy, just enough to deny him the speakership. Kevin McCarthy has been ousted as House Speaker. And it was his own hubris that ousted him as House Speaker. We have an interim House Speaker now. His name is Patrick McHenry. People are asking what do you need to know about Patrick McHenry and all this other stuff. To be honest,
morally corrupt.
He's a legislator from North Carolina that you don't need to know particularly much about. All you really need to know is that he's up shit creek without a paddle. Or McCarthy has jumped ship. He said he's not going to run for re-election. He's not going to run again to be House Speaker. So he's out of that race. Patrick McHenry, with such a divided Republican Party, with some Republicans suggesting now that they should vote to censure Matt Gaetz, with the amount of hatred that is directed towards Matt Gaetz and the amount of vitriol that's coming from Matt Gaetz towards the rest of the Republican legislators, it's going to be pretty hard for them to unite the party around a unified message to move forward on policy. And if he is to work with the Democrats on anything, to compromise with them, then that's something that's going to spoil him even more with a large swath of the Republican Party. And he would have to really put his hopes on these Democratic moderates compromising with him. There was some talk at the last hour, as McCarthy looked like he was going to lose the vote, of him possibly compromising with Democrats to get enough votes to flip it. And there were some blue dog Democrats, more, I don't know if I'm going to call them moderate Democrats, but more centrist Democrats that were considering it. But ultimately, every single Democrat voted against McCarthy as House Speaker. And the reason why is they saw it as something of, him making his own bed. You make your own bed, you sleep in it. This is off topic, but I was told by my translator that I use idioms too much. And the more I stream and the more I talk on stream, the more I recognize that I really do use idioms a whole lot. But idioms are fun. But I saw this one tweet that I think really encapsulated, a tweet from Capitol Hill, what happened with the speakership vote. And this comes from a senior House Democrat. A senior House Dem source makes this point. One of the worst things McCarthy did, in the Democrats' view, is lower the threshold to the motion to vacate. By doing this, he made himself beholden to a few House Republicans who could throw him out at any time, and that instructed his behavior over the last few months. They don't really care that Gaetz is doing this. They think this is the chickens coming home to roost, and they're absolutely right. The reason why McCarthy snubbed Zelensky when he came to the House is partially because he was trying to appease two psychos like Matt Gaetz. The reason why he keeps caving on Ukraine aid, the reason why he keeps going further and further to the right, is because he needs to try to drag those few last people from the fringes away from calling this vote, and in order to call them in favor of voting in favor of the legislation. They have get them in favor of voting in favor of the legislation on their agenda. Now, does this matter in the grand scheme of things? Not really. The Senate, they don't have, so they can't get legislation through there. A lot of this is going to be symbolic. But now the little bit they could do, they can't do it all. It's going to be hard for me to imagine much compromise in the next year with McCarthy out, an interim speaker who doesn't have nearly as much influence, who wasn't duly elected into the position, and with a fringe that is perfectly willing to just sink the whole ship with the power that McCarthy gave them. But I don't know why McCarthy's surprised. He gave them the power, and they used the power. You think you give Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boeberts, and the rest of these psychos a shotgun and they're not going to pull the trigger? Of course these people are trigger happy. Of course they're going to take the opportunity to be an attention whore, get in front of the cameras, have everybody circle around them, and them tell them how, oh, we need to stop all this money for Ukraine because that money should be going for the border. So therefore, I'm voting against McCarthy. Well, now nothing's going to the border. Nothing's going to happen because nothing's going to happen for the next year until 2024 and the House makeup changes. As long as the Republicans have such a small majority in their leadership, and we're talking Kevin McCarthy, someone who's supposed to be a smart cookie who just barely got the speakership in the first place, and had to make these concessions in his mind to do it. If he's making these mistakes, how is Patrick McHenry going to do it? How is anybody who's going to take his place going to do it? Who can take his place and unite these people more than Kevin McCarthy could? I'll wait for an answer. You want to know who Matt Gaetz is putting forward as nominee? Jim Jordan. They're putting together all of these fringe people, and they're going to push them. They're going to push the fringe to be the House Speaker. Somebody who is not going to be able to unite with the Republicans who support aid to Ukraine, is not going to be able to unite with the Republicans who live in swing districts, who can't vote as crazy as they can. The Republicans have such a slim majority of like 5 votes. They don't got the wiggle room. They don't got the wiggle room. And now the chickens have come home to roost, as the senior House Dems put it. The tail has wagged the dog. McCarthy was grabbed by the throat by the windpipe. He was goozled by the windpipe and thrown out of the speakership. Now the Republican Party is in disarray. It's in complete chaos. And by God, it's hard to imagine how we're going to somehow find a budget in 45 days when the extension runs out. How the hell are we going to find a budget with Patrick McHenry at the helm? If he can do it, if Patrick McHenry can do it, props to him. But I don't think the odds are great. It really feels like we kicked the can down the road. The ship sunk in the effort to kick the can down the road, and now there's no viable path forward. Is Patrick McHenry going to compromise with Democrats in order to get a budget passed? Who knows? Who knows? All I know is that I feel no pity for Kevin McCarthy. He gave the psychos in his party a machine gun that could, at any moment, the trigger could be pulled and they could riddle a bunch of holes in his speakership. And he expected them, as the attention whores that they are, as part of the Trump cult, they expected them not to do it. While Donald Trump was egging them on for the sidelines, not to sign deals, not to compromise, not to at all pass a budget. Let the government shut down. Let government employees be furloughed. Millions of American workers not taking home checks from their workplace. Shut down the national parks. They don't care. And now this is the result. Kevin McCarthy made his bed. He has to sleep in it. You lie with snakes, you can't get angry when you get bitten. Joe Biden had a small reaction to this, which I thought was kind of funny.
Or not that they're asking, what's your advice to the next House Speaker?
That's above my pay grade.
That's above my pay grade. So, for those of you who are wondering what the new Speaker of the House can do, what he's going to do with such a slim majority, such a divided party, I was hearing reports that there were Republican legislators literally crying on the House floor because they knew how this makes them look. They knew what this meant for the legislative agenda. They knew what this meant for the future of the party, and they knew that this could possibly fuck them going into 2024. So what can they do? Well, we found that out yesterday. Nancy Pelosi ordered by interim House Speaker McHenry to vacate her office in the Capitol building. This is the next year, a bunch of symbolism and nonsense that affects nothing and fixes none of the country's problems. We're not going to get them to consider a reintroduction of the child tax credit that helped cut child poverty in half. We're not going to hear them talk about investments into public housing. We're not going to hear them talk about more investments into public infrastructure to try to upgrade our public infrastructure rating. We're not going to talk about investments in the monorail. We're not going to talk about investments into cybersecurity or any number of issues that are vastly important. Instead, it's going to be a year of grandstanding and jerking themselves off in front of the American people about how conservative and based and red-pilled they are because they're wrecking the libs. That's what the Republicans are doing with their House majority. Are you happy? Those who voted for this, and I'm not trying to, I don't want to piss on anybody for voting, right? But when you voted for the Republican House majority, is this what you wanted? Is this what people wanted? I know that in the midterms, the Democrats had the best result of a midterm election for a sitting president in 30, 40 years. But the Republicans were still able to take the House. And with that, they haven't been able to govern. They've kicked out their House Speaker after giving these radicals too much power. They're in complete disarray. They're going to get none of their agenda done. And so what are they going to do for the next year? Obstruct. That's it. They're going to obstruct Biden's agenda. They're going to obstruct the targeting of childhood poverty. They're going to obstruct investments into public housing. They're going to obstruct investments into climate change. Investments into green energy and things to combat climate change. They're going to obstruct, sadly, unless we get some good work with the more establishment types, they're going to try to obstruct aid to Ukraine. Maybe not McHenry will. Maybe not all of the Republican Party will. But these radicals are going to try to use this as a launching point to obstruct more aid to Ukraine. Hopefully that will fail. We still have about half of elected Republicans who are still in favor of aid to Ukraine. So hopefully that will fail. But the next year is going to be nothing but obstruction. We're going to get the same. We're going to get the same as the last year, but worse. No compromise on anything. No bipartisan anything. The few things like the infrastructure bill, the Inflation Reduction Act, the investments in the roads, bridges, the CHIPS Act, those few things they're able to get done, we're going to see people like Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan calling any work, any legislation, any compromise with the Democrats, machine gun it. It's ridiculous, man. They've made a mess of it. They've made a mess of the House. They've made a mess of themselves. They've humiliated themselves in front of the country. And now this is the result. We kind of all saw it coming from a mile away immediately when he agreed to it. Immediately when he agreed to the rule that any one person could call a speakership recall election. So I'm not that surprised. I don't feel bad for him. When you act like a Nimrod, when you're no sharper than a marble in how you legislate, then this result isn't that surprising. So just get ready for a year of grandstanding and very little getting done. Congratulations. You've achieved chaos and nothing else. And look, I don't like McCarthy. I don't want him to be the speaker. I personally am not that angry about this. In fact, I get a little bit of joy out of seeing the chickens come to roost in this way. But if you're a Republican, this is a fucking mess. And if you're somebody who wants the House to actually get anything done in the next year, this is a mess. Perhaps Democrats should have helped him out to prevent a worse speaker? No. No. The last thing we should do is make the norm the rules that McCarthy agreed to. Sitch and Adam were calling Dems evil for not helping Lamau. What? Why were they calling them evil? Is that real? He agrees to these dumb fuck rules and then we gotta bail him out? There's no way. Did they actually? You need to send me the clip. I need the context. They can deal with their own problems. Look, McCarthy would have had to make some pretty big concessions in order to get Democrats to sign on. They would. And those concessions that he would need to make would probably mean he would lose Republican support, or at least some Republican support. And it'd probably only intensify some of that resistance. Whatever reason, he didn't do enough work to try to get those Democrat votes. You think Democrats have better rules? Tell that to Bern. I don't know why I spelled Bernie like that. But I'm not saying that the Democratic Party is exactly the best. I don't like how the DNC treated Bernie Sanders in 2016. And I think 2016 is when he got screwed the most. Donna Brazile should not even be, in my opinion, associated with the Democratic Party anymore. What she did to try to kneecap Bernie and help Hillary during the debates, associated with the party and the way she is, no, that was terrible. Not to mention, do we really think that there isn't anything that McCarthy could have offered 8 Democrats to get their vote? I'm sure there's something. But I don't think, for example, if he would have gone to them and said, I will bring back the child tax credit, he could have gotten their vote. Problem is, the Republicans would have abandoned him then. He worked himself into a rock and a hard place. Here's the video.
Either A, the Democrats are literally the stupidest people on the planet, which is possible, highly possible. Or
that's likely.
Or they are actually evil. Whoever replaces McCarthy is going to say, the Democrats are not going to help me. They're going to stab me in the back if I compromise with them at all.
Right, yeah.
They're just making it so that whoever replaces McCarthy 100% has to listen to Matt Gaetz and these, 8 people.
Yeah, it has to be party line votes from here on out. Yeah.
There's Matt Gaetz as the Joker and his 8 little henchmen are holding the entire Republican House hostage, and the Democrats are just sitting there eating popcorn, letting it happen because they don't care.
They need to look, if they want Democrat votes, they're gonna have to compromise some of their positions. This is what's happened. The Republican Party has become a fucking mess. They fucked everything up by agreeing to that vacate rule. That was the dumbest thing McCarthy could have done. Then he let the tail wag the dog. He let them get led by the nose. He let them get goozled, get grabbed by the windpipe by Gaetz, by agreeing to give them that machine gun. It was a terrible idea. And then once he gave that machine gun to Gaetz, he gave also that machine gun to literally everybody. Any House Republican could have called a vacate vote. Any House Republican could have done that. Literally anyone. And so if McCarthy starts making deals with Democrats, what he should have done, and by the way, I'm not against the Democrats making a deal, keep McCarthy as speaker for a brief period, or at least for the next year until the next election, we hopefully change the makeup of the House, if he was willing to compromise on key issues. We can't just give him votes for no reason because he made a mess of his own party and agreed to stupid rules. He would need to compromise on something like a child tax credit. That's something that I think could have won over Democrat votes. Problem is, though, the vast majority of the Republican Party would have shot that down because it was I think every single Republican voted against extending the child tax credit, even though that cut child poverty in half. And it was putting money in the hands of working class people. Look, if there is a way for us to find some compromise, we should have done it. But I mean, I wasn't in those House meetings, so I can't say if that was ever a viable option. Now it's assured to be some major MAGA freak. Well, right now they've got like an interim guy, so we don't know for sure. And let's also be clear. Like, I think I see people saying, like, in chat, like, oh, now Ukraine aid is busted. Half of Republicans still support Ukraine aid. You add that with Democrats, that's more than enough to pass a House vote. You have Joe Biden in office, there's not going to be no veto. We got Senate as well. So I mean, they're disrupting the process of sending aid, but we still have the votes. I can't. The title of this is Democrats Foolishly Fumble Everything. Honestly, I feel like Adam and Sitch sometimes they just gotta like both sides it. Just gotta both sides everything. I think this might be one of those things. I'd have to go watch this, and we gotta end stream because I need to head over to Good Morning Kiev. I'm doing the Kiev show to talk about my embed out east. So if Adam and Sitch wanted to bring me on to talk about this sometime, that'd be great. I'd be fine. I'd be happy to talk about it. Only if they also allow me to talk about Ukraine, because I am the shill of Kiev. You know, this ghost of Kiev. I'm the shill of Kiev. But I'd be willing to talk to them about it. I don't get the take. We'd have to watch. To fully understand their take, to be fair, I'd have to watch the full video, right? I just saw the intro clip and the title, and I'm reacting reactively, reactionarily, but I'm having like an immediate reaction, because I saw this coming ever since he agreed to that rule. This was coming.